Retro gamers rejoice. These past few years we've seen a surge of re-releases, remakes, remasters, and collections of some great game series from our childhood days. Such games as the Crash Bandicoot and Spyro series, Crash Team Racing, Live Alive, and many more. And although I feel more recognized as an old school gamer than ever before, there's still always a game or series I'm hoping to see get the remastered treatment. Here's a list of 10 games and game series I hope we see again in 2024. Okay, technically we did get a re-release of these games for the Nintendo Switch this year, but what we need for these two gems, which were originally released in 2001, is to get the Link's Awakening treatment with modern quality of life improvements and a graphics overhaul. I couldn't tell you how happy I was to see the new control scheme in the Link's Awakening Switch version, and honestly the only thing keeping me from revisiting and finishing these two games is the clunky menu system. Originally released in 1998 when Squaresoft was going ham on the Sony PlayStation, Parasite Eve should be re-released just for the fact that it's an amazing game, but what it really needs is a new coat of paint on those pre-rendered backgrounds. The 3D boxes are easy enough to spot, but there are some places in the game where you can get stuck if you don't know where to look because you couldn't make out that desk drawer you needed to open to get that key. Toss in some quality of life improvements and more clarity on the item combining system, and you'll have a lot of happy fans. I'll admit this is more of a personal interest rather than a game I think people are clamoring for, but Dark Savior has one of the most innovative gameplay mechanics for a game in the 90s I've ever seen. It handles time travel and parallel dimensions in a way that actually kind of makes sense without being too messy. Although the camera controls were state of the art and new at the time, they are a bit outdated and could be improved with modern hardware. The same goes for the clunky stuck to a grid movement controls. Give it the 2D HD treatment and revive one of the best Saturn games to ever be released. But leave Garion's mullet alone. It stands the test of time. The Jet Moto series began its debut in 1996 on the Sony PlayStation and was followed by two sequels over the next 3 years. This one was a Sony exclusive, so it's surprising we haven't seen anything from the series in almost 30 years. And as I'm recording this video, they just announced that the original Jet Moto is being re-released for the PlayStation Plus service, which is amazing. For a remaster, I don't want anything changed besides a graphical update. I love the handling of the bikes during the races and felt the controls were spot on and extremely responsive. If they really want to change something, I guess they can revamp the grapple and trick systems and toss in some new tracks for good measure.
Like the ones they use in detective stories.
Based on the 1967 sci-fi short story of the same name, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream was released in 1995, and although it won several awards, was a commercial failure. This point-and-click game is not for the faint of heart as it touches on some extremely controversial and ethical subject matter, and it does so unapologetically. Seen today as a cult classic, this game definitely deserves a new coat of paint and put back into the hands of gamers who are looking for a more surreal and cerebral experience. Lovers of the horror genre should be aware that games today don't hit at the same level as this one.
Want to know how much I don't want to go down there?
This series spans from its first release in the arcades in 1985 to the PSP title in 2006. There have been a ton of collections from several companies, including Capcom, so where's my Ghosts and Goblins collection? You've got the mainline series, the Gargoyles Quest series, and the 2 Maximo games. A collection would give Capcom an opportunity to fix the input issue with Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins and continue to introduce new gamers to the series that it started with Resurrection, released in 2021. Released later in the Sony PlayStation's lifespan in 2000, Vagrant Story catered to hardcore gamers with its innovative and extremely in-depth weapon crafting system, as well as its pausable real-time combat mechanics in the same style as Parasite Eve. Pair all that with awesome graphics, sound design, and a well-written mature script, and you've got one of the best games released on the system. Apparently during development, Square had to cut a lot of story elements and gameplay mechanics to run at an acceptable frame rate on the PlayStation. A modern remake with that cut content and updated controls and graphics would bring those hardcore Square fans together again to explore Le Amant. I have one stipulation if this series gets redone. Leave the dialogue alone.
Perhaps the head of her beloved will convince Ariel that I have accomplished my task.
Brush up the quality a little bit, but other than that, do not touch one word. The Blood Omen series started off on the PlayStation and PC in 1996 and ran with 5 games altogether, ending with Defiance in 2003. There have been rumblings about a remake with the current IP owner asking for beta testers on a secret game they're developing. I like to see the whole series given the remake treatment, especially Soul Reaver 2. That game was rushed horribly with so much cut content, but of all the games, the original really needs an update. I love the game, but you can't ignore that even though the graphics were amazing and well animated for the time, nowadays they can be hard to look at. The PlayStation original had horrible load times which would be rectified with a modern release. Give it the same touch as Diablo 2 Resurrection got and get it back into the hands of the Nosgoth faithful. Released in 1992 to English audiences for the Super Nintendo is Baby's first RPG, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. Yes, when you compare it to the mainline series, fans will tell you Mystic Quest doesn't come anywhere close. I personally have a lot of nostalgia for the game, and anytime I get asked what's a good RPG for someone just getting into the genre, I always recommend Mystic Quest. The thing is, it suffers the same fate as Dracula X in that it's not a bad game, it just doesn't compare to the other games released around the same time of the same series. I think a remaster could give the game a difficulty revamp and cater to the series' hardcore fans while keeping the original difficulty for those new to RPGs. I know this had a re-release on the Nintendo DS, but I want Diddy Kong Racing to get the same treatment that Crash Team Racing got, because that game is phenomenal. Released in 1997 for the Nintendo 64, the original still holds up really well today, and the inclusion of multiple vehicles gave the game a ton of replay value. Give me more tracks, maybe online play, more vehicles, and show everyone who the real MVP of N64 kart racing is. And there you have it, my list of games I want to see reintroduced to gamers to fall in love with as I have. What do you think of my list? What games or game series would you like to see re-released, remade, or upgraded? Are there any collections you'd like to see? Let me know in the comments below. And that's it for me. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
These were the pillars so familiar to my blighted eyes.